Well, I was a typical. I grew up in a very normal family. One sister, mum and dad. Not particularly, just a normal family. Money was tight and all the rest of it. And I think as a sort of annoying 5-year-old brother, I used to attack my bigger sister. I think a fair bit of my parents was, God, we need to find a focus for this child so he doesn't destroy everything. Um, so they tried me at boxing and they tried me at karate and couldn't quite get the idea of just punching the air. And they took me to judo. This was 1982 or 3. So a long, long time ago. I was 5. So 83. And a place down called the Jubilee Centre in Nuneaton. My hometown, not particularly very big town, but had a great judo club. Now, judo in England is based of 3 levels. You've got the AJA, the BJC, and the BJA. The AJA being the Amateur Judo Association. So that's where I started. I remember my first day going on the mat, which is crazy. It was me and 100 other kids probably, just running around on their first day. And funny enough, the friends that I met on that day are still my friends today. So Andrew Machin, Lee Burbridge, who I travelled around the world with judo for Great Britain, we met at that club at 5 years old. Fast forward now to nearly 49, and we still class these people as friends. But my early days as a judoka, was very much, I took to it like a duck to water. I had this ability that I could throw people very, very quickly. To the point was in my first year, I won the club championships, and I remember receiving the trophy, and the trophy was actually probably bigger than me. I was a very small young man. I think my first tournament, I weighed 27 kilos.
Yeah, well,
which is kind of funny. I remember my early coaches in life, and those coaches really embedded a discipline in me, which I still carry on through today in business. Just seeing things, never being late to judo, always having your fingernails clean, always making sure that your judo gi is clean, always make sure that you've got your right refreshments. Just these basic fundamental things which you can carry through life. So, I took judo from the age of 5 until I was around 10 to as far as the Amateur Judo Association could take me to. I had some great influences as a kid, a guy called Mick Green, great judo coach, still around now, helped me tremendously. Ken Hunt, God rest his soul, was the hardest judo coach you've ever met. You think to that, me as a judo coach now, I'd send my son onto the mat, and if I saw my son being basically beaten up by an older man, in this day and age, you'd be like, you can't do that. But back in the 80s, it was quite normal for you to get the shit kicked out to you as a 8 to 9, 10-year-old. But in doing that, it wasn't being they were beating you up to be bullies. They were beating me up to be tough. So, at a very, very young age, I was ingrained to be hard as a fucking nail.
Mm.
That association, I'd reached the ceiling. I couldn't get any higher. I was a junior brown belt, which I couldn't go any higher to be a black belt until I was 16, but I was always the highest I could go. So the natural progression for me was to go to the next association up. And that's where I was very, very fortunate to be introduced to a man called Neil Adams. Now, Neil, anyone that knows judo or actually in sport as a whole, Neil Adams was world champion, double Olympic silver medalist, 5-time European champion. And he was based in Coventry. I lived in Nuneaton, it's about 12 miles apart. And he took me on as one of his students, which is an honour to have someone like that train you. So that obviously took my career from a position where I was a good fighter to becoming an athlete. Then over the next sort of 6 years, from 10 to 16, I was on a career path for the Olympic Games, 96 Atlanta, Sydney 2000 was also on the target. So I was sort of then, when I left school, I remember my school teacher, Her name was Mrs. Walrus. I used to call her Mrs. Walrus. And, you know, my father comes in and she said, we think James is going to be a car mechanic. And I was like, no, fucking no. I'm going to be Olympic champion. And she couldn't quite see how somebody could want to do a sport for not a career. But my father, I remember him very saying, what do you want to do with your life? And so I'm going to be an Olympic champion. And we said to the teacher, he's going to be Olympic champion. And so this was my mindset. So I left school abruptly to go to train. So I went and trained with Neil as a full-time professional athlete.